Well, results are trickling in after the most important day of the 2024 US elections. In more than a dozen US states, people are out to vote for their presidential choice. And as we speak, polling has concluded in at least 8 states. Let's look at the latest developments. Polls have now closed in the Democratic and Republican primary contests in Vermont and Virginia. Exit polls by CNN and CBS News claim that US President Joe Biden has won the Democratic primaries in Virginia and North Carolina. The same projections have also predicted similar fate for former President Donald Trump in the 2 states. As more developments are kicking in, let's quickly understand what is Super Tuesday and why the day has been dubbed as one of the most crucial days of the 2024 US elections. Voters in 16 US states and 1 US territory are choosing their presidential candidates in primaries. Later in the day, the fate of 1,439 Democratic and 874 Republican delegates will be decided. Overall, Biden has secured 206 delegates so far. He needs a total of 1,968 out of the 3,934 delegates to win. 1,421 delegates that represent roughly a third of all delegates are up for grabs. On the other hand, the former president, Donald Trump, standing with 244 delegates right now. Trump needs a total of 1,215 of the 2,429 delegates. In the Republican primary, 874 delegates are up for grabs on Super Tuesday. The U.S. territory of American Samoa is simultaneously holding its Democratic caucus. The Democratic Party in Iowa has announced that Joe Biden has won the Democratic caucus in the state. However, experts say only after the release of all votes one can analyze the breakaway and how many people voted for uncommitted instead of Biden as a form of protest. A similar thing that happened in the state of Michigan. Meanwhile, Trump is looking to start the day with a commanding lead in the delegate count. However, the main question in the Republican side remains the survival of Trump's lone challenger in the presidential race. We're of course talking about the woman on your screens, Nikki Haley, who has won only one contest so far, the primary in Washington, D.C. Even though she is falling far behind in terms of delegates, Haley insists that Republicans deserve a second option. Earlier, Haley's campaign sent out a last-minute fundraising email. The mail urged the people to step up with any amount they can before the polls close. Of course, one of the most important days in the year in the US, the most important day of the 2024 US elections. In more than a dozen US states, people are out to vote for their presidential choice. And as we speak, polling has concluded in at least 8 states in the US. We're bringing you all the details here. Polls have now closed in the Democratic and Republican primary contests in Vermont and Virginia. Exit polls by CNN and CBS, of course, several other exit polls have now claimed that US President Joe Biden has won the Democratic primaries in Virginia and North Carolina. The same projections have also predicted similar fate for former President Donald Trump in the 2 states. As more developments are kicking in, let's quickly understand, of course, from our correspondent Chris Casqueo, our Voice of America correspondent Chris Casqueo, who's joining us live from the state of Virginia. Chris, always a pleasure speaking with you, getting us all the updates. Wanted to understand from you, what do we know about the voter turnout in the Super Tuesday primaries as of now?
Yeah, we can talk about turnout in a second, but first let's talk about some of the early results that are coming in. 10 of the 16 polls have closed by 8:30 Eastern, so just a couple of minutes ago, and the polls began to close here in Virginia at 7 p.m. local time. Former President Donald Trump is projected to win Maine, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia,
and Oklahoma in the Republican primary. And going into this Super Tuesday, Trump had 273 delegates, and if he sweeps all these Super Tuesday contests, he will be 74 delegates short of winning the Republican nomination. Haley, thus far going into Super Tuesday, has only 43 delegates. 5 states, California, Texas, North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, are holding primaries for other important races, so that might help turnout. And something else to watch is there is usually a high turnout among independents and Democrats to vote in the Democratic primary, and that would help, or to vote in the Republican primary. Those are so-called open primaries, and that would help Haley and the majority of her supporters so far in these early primary elections have been these Democratic voters and independents who've been crossing over in open primaries to vote for her.
Chris, of course, the results have been coming in and you are going to be bringing us the updates a little later in the day as well. I wanted to just get an understanding from you. You mentioned Nikki Haley. She seems to be signaling that she won't leave the race after the Super Tuesday results come in. What do we know about her situation at the moment? What's the strategy that she's going with?
Well, so far she's not planning to give any speech like she did in New Hampshire. And she said her main goal in tonight's primaries is to remain competitive, but she's been pretty vague about what that means. She said, quote, "We are a bunch of happy warriors today, getting out the vote, playing music, and having fun." And that's her campaign said that in a statement. Haley's campaign has confirmed that she has no events planned for Wednesday, and her campaign has not scheduled any ad buys in any of the states that have primaries on March 12th and March 19th. So she's being really vague about her plans, but some signs point to her dropping out, but other signs point to her staying in. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right, Chris, stay with us as of now. We just want to cut across to, of course, Chris spoke to various supports of the major candidates prior to the exit polls. Let's take a look at that.
I voted for Nikki Haley. I'm a registered Democrat.
Oh, so that's interesting. Can you tell us what
because I
behind it?
Want to do everything I can so that Trump is not president.
I voted for Donald Trump. He's basically the strongest candidate on the Republican side, and the last term he was in as the president, he produced results in terms of both foreign policy and economy.
Looking at, the history of what both of those candidates have done, mostly for minority groups, I would support Trump in that. Being a queer woman, I think Trump has said some very detrimental things to our community, and I have to go with the other option.
Chris, I'd like to come back to you. Of course, Chris Cascio, who's our Voice of America correspondent, joining us on World, of course, joining us on WION. Chris, what's the amount of cross-voting that is taking place? Has there been any such instance that you've come across in your ground report?
Well, yeah, we've talked to some of the voters here in Virginia who have pulled Republican ballots to vote for Nikki Haley because they don't want to see Donald Trump vote in the White House. Again, Virginia has an open primary. It's one of 6 of the 16 states voting today that has an open primary where Democrats and Republicans can cross over and vote in either party or either primary. So it is possible that some are doing this. Now, exit polls are saying that the most important issues for voters, at least in North Carolina and here in Virginia, are immigration, economy, abortion, and foreign policy.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for bringing us.
Of course, Republicans are running on immigration and border security as their top issue, as well as the economic struggles of Americans with high inflation, whereas Democrats definitely want to make this race about abortion and abortion rights.
All right, Chris, we'll come back to you a little later in the day for more updates. Thank you so much for bringing us all the updates from the ground. Of course, Super Tuesday results are coming in as more and more results trickle from the different primaries. Thank you so much. And that was Chris Cascio from Voice of America.